Hey, church family. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you this evening. Today marks the beginning of what is often called Passion Week, which is the last week of Jesus's life. And today itself specifically is often referred to as Palm Sunday, a day in which Jesus began his journey into Jerusalem and ultimately his journey to the cross. Matthew chapter 21 recounts this story, and here's what Matthew writes starting in verse 1. He says, "As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, 'Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away.' This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. 'Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey.' The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt, placed their cloaks on them, and Jesus sat on them. And a very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, 'Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.'" You know, when we read that, maybe it's easy, at least it is for me, to kind of picture this scene of exuberant praise and worship as the long-awaited Messiah comes into Jerusalem. Jesus enters in, and they're worshiping and praising this king, this Messiah that they've been waiting so long for. And yet, that word Hosanna is really a cry of desperation and deliverance more than it is a cry of exuberance and worship. Literally, the word means save me now, or save me, I pray. Unfortunately, the kind of saving that the people that were shouting those words expected and wanted wasn't exactly the kind of salvation and deliverance that Jesus came to bring. In their minds, they wanted a Messiah who would march into the city and do hard business with Rome. They wanted to be free from Gentile oppression, even if by force, even if by threats and plagues and parting seas like they had recounted so well in their history. They wanted another Exodus, if you will, this time with the Romans being expelled. Instead, what they got by Friday morning was a bloodied and beaten man in Roman custody, rejected by their own leaders, standing next to an infamous criminal by the name of Barabbas. They wanted an incomparable king who would rule, and yet what they seemed to have gotten was a beaten blasphemer. I mean, their promised king wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to conquer the Roman Empire and be, well, a king, right? But the salvation that Jesus came to bring wasn't a salvation from the Roman Empire and Roman bondage, but a salvation from the bondage of sin. And the kingdom that he came to bring wasn't one of this world and an earthly kingdom, but rather a heavenly kingdom. And I wonder if sometimes we don't fall victim to the same problems and the same mindset that those people shouting those words on that day had. You know, we all have a tendency to kind of put God in our own little box, and we have these views and these thoughts and this mindset of how he's going to work and how we expect him to work in certain situations that we find ourselves in, or that we see around us, or that we're going through, and it can challenge the very core of our beliefs when he doesn't meet our expectations. And so often it's easy to cry out to God for help and deliverance, especially in the midst of times of crisis and uncertainty and fearful times, much like what we're going through right now. And there's nothing wrong with crying out to God for help and deliverance in those times. Certainly he invites us to ask for his help, but let's not miss the ultimate purpose of the help and deliverance that he desires to bring. Because it's not simply a deliverance from this life, or in this life, from the difficulties and the trials that we face, but rather it is the ultimate deliverance from the penalty of sin that he brought through the shedding of his blood on the cross of Calvary. And it is the ultimate victory over death itself through his resurrection and the empty tomb that we'll celebrate next Sunday and every Sunday. And it is the ultimate hope that we have because of those two realities. So I hope you have a blessed rest of your evening and a great week this week. God bless.